So last time we were talking about stuff, we were talking about feudal Japan. And for feudal Japan, we talked about how before the year 700, Japan looked very similar to China. They were using kind of the same characters, they're using the same kind of art style, government structure, and such. But then once we get past the year 700, they started to kind of develop their own style of doing things. And Buddhism started to come in the area from Korea and started combining with Shintoism to kind of form this Buddhist Shinto religion. And then we talked about their pyramid and how emperor was at the top and our merchants were at the bottom. Eventually, the merchants are going to swap places with the peasants. Peasants being the farmers, then got swapped to the bottom with the merchants. Why were the merchants considered to be so low for was because the merchants didn't make anything. Peasants were fishermen, or farmers, so they made food. Artisans, made they baked goods, or they made a sword, for example. Merchants didn't make anything; just sold stuff that other people made. Eventually, as I said before, the merchants make a lot of money, and then they're going to swap places with the peasants. So this is going to happen about the year 1500, 1600. They're going to swap places with the peasants. All right. So in the system, how it kind of works is as a shogun, he has land, and he's kind of controlling Japan. So the shogun is in control over most of Japan. They have the biggest military force, and the shogun has daimyos that work for him and so forth. The shogun might divvy out land, but for the most part, these daimyos already have control over a particular piece of land. The daimyos then give land to the samurai. So they give land to the samurai. Those samurai live on that land. And then those samurai provide protection to the peasants. Peasants, of course, provide food to the samurai, who then give that food to the daimyo, so the daimyo can then provide food for his military forces and store food and so forth. And in turn, samurai is loyal to the daimyo and such. All right, so it kind of works like that. All right, new bullet. Code of Bushido. New bullet, Code of Bushido. So these are some aspects of the Code of Bushido: fidelity, politeness, versatility, and simplicity. Those are some aspects of the Code of Bushido. And after you have bullet Code of Bushido, we're going to make a 1, and we're going to write down Way of the Warrior. So we're going to have 1 and then Way of the Warrior. So we're going to write that down for number 1. So Way of the Warrior. So Code of Bushido is just kind of the way of the warrior in Japan. So just the way of the warrior in Japan and kind of the ways and things that they believe are important. Right, so it's kind of just what they believe is important in Japan for a warrior. Okay. This shows you right here just a samurai and what a samurai wears. Now, this is kind of more of a ceremonial garb and so forth, or something you would wear if you're visiting the emperor or a rich person's a rich person. So if you're visiting a rich person or they're visiting the emperor, this is kind of what they would wear. This is more ceremonial than what they would actually wear. But you can see, for example, they got a katana and a short katana. I think it's called a wazaki. I forget the exact name of it, but you have a katana as their main sword, and then wazaki is kind of like a half katana, basically. So you can see a katana over here on the side. You kind of see how that's a curved blade, right? So that's what he has. He has one curved blade and then one kind of half blade. It's like a wazaki. It's kind of a short blade. I think I got some other examples over here. Wakashi. Anyway, okay, so wakashi is their other blade, sorry. So katana is the main one, then wakashi is kind of the small one. This kind of shows you the various aspects of the Japanese armor. You see where they have all the armor on. That's kind of what it looks like when it's all done. The armor that they're using here is a studded leather armor. What studded leather is it's leather armor with iron studs in it. So you can see these little gray things. Those are our iron studs that are in the armor. So you have this kind of leather armor, and then you have the little gray little iron studs that are in the armor. These are just how the swords kind of developed over time. So originally, the blades the Japanese were using were just kind of this very flat blade. So that's originally what they were using. And then they got a little bit of a curve on it. So you can kind of see how it has then a curve on it when they got into later. Then they get into a bit better of a curve. You can also see how the edge is serrated. So you can see those serrated edges there. It's a bit better of a curve. You see how then the blade got a bit longer kind of later on. Then it shortened down a bit more of a curve. And then not so much of a curve, but you can still see that serration onto it. and you see again how it's a pretty long blade. All right. So eventually, when you get to like the 1800s, you kind of get to the katanas that you guys kind of see nowadays. But when we're talking about the samurai time period, like the big samurai time period, we're talking more about this blade right here in the center. That's kind of what we're talking more about. We're talking about the standard katana. And so it's more of that blade. All right. This is kind of just goes for the various armor steps. So, putting on your pants, and putting on your kimono over it. So this kind of talks about the various steps, putting on another set of pants after that, putting on your shin guards. So this kind of talks about the various things. The little flags on the backs, what are those worn for? That's just for identifying like where people are. It's like, all right, where are my troops at? And then you can easily see where your troops are at. So if you're a commander, this has made it easy to find like where your troops are at, and that way you can command things a bit better. Although in Japan, they would generally do single combat. So a lot of times, this is at least early on, in like 1300s and so forth, they do a lot of single combat. They aren't really moving in like huge groups and doing a whole bunch of group tactical battle stuff. It's really a lot more like, hey, find an opponent, fight opponent, find a new opponent, fight that opponent one-on-one, so forth and so on. This is kind of just modern day samurai garb. So you can see how it's very similar to that picture we saw before. And you kind of see how they have two blades. You got your katana as your main blade, and then your wakashi as your second blade. Now, the feudalism in Europe looked very similar to feudalism in Japan. You got your king. King then has lords that work for him. Knights are basically your samurai. They also have land given to them by lords, and the knights protect the peasants. Peasants give food to the knights. Knights then make sure that food gets to the lords, so that way food can be provided for the entire military force. Loyalty then goes up the ladder, just like in Japan. Gonna make a bullet, write down code of chivalry. So bullet code of chivalry. So the code of chivalry, you then have like justice, loyalty, defense, courage, faith, humility, and nobility. So the code of chivalry, that's the way of the warrior in Europe. So way of the warrior in Europe. I don't think they would call it, way of the warrior like in Europe. They would be like, oh yeah, chivalry, way of the warrior. But for simplicity's sake, since Code of Bushido means way of the warrior, we'll write down bullet code of chivalry, and then we'll have down one way of the warrior in Europe. So one way of the warrior in Europe. So chivalry is just, how warriors conducted themselves in Europe, knights. That's how they conducted themselves in Europe. All right. Let's talk about armor next. So let's compare our European armor to our samurai armor. So I'm going to show you two different armors here. So you have your knight's armor on the left, and your samurai's armor is on the right. You see how the knight's armor is made out of kind of an iron, although this one might be made out of steel, though. But we'll just say iron for simplicity's sake. So you see how you have one made completely out of metal, iron, and then you have another one, samurai armor, which is made out of leather, and then it has these little iron studs in it, like we talked about before. It's studded leather. So you kind of see the difference between the two armors here and kind of what they look like the time period. In a knight's armor, you move really slow in a knight's armor. I know in movies they make it seem like knights can move pretty good. No, you're moving kind of in slow motion in armor. I mean, it's made out of iron. It's not like it bends easily. So it's actually pretty hard to fight in knight's armor. You're very slow on it. Yeah, you definitely want to stay on your horse. And horses at this time period are pretty big to be able to hold a knight, because it's got to hold the knight, it's got to hold all his armor. So nowadays, a good racehorse, like a good thoroughbred racehorse, would be like 1,200 pounds, so 1,200 pounds. A good knight's horse at this time period would probably be more like 1,600 pounds. So it would be a bit heavier, a bit bulkier. It's not as fast as like nowadays, like thoroughbred horses, you see like Kentucky Derby, not like those horses. It'd be a bit bulkier because it has to carry a knight and, all his heavy self there with all his armor and such. Samurai, on the other hand, though, they're a bit lighter because they're wearing leather, but you can see how it's very bulky. All right, because leather, isn't as good at stopping a blade as a knight's armor. So iron armor, real good at stopping a slashing weapon. That's like when you're trying to cut someone, when you're just kind of slashing at them, trying to cut, not like you're not trying to stab, you're just trying to like cut across them. This is good for that. Leather armor, not so much. The leather armor can get cut pretty good by a good slashing weapon, by a good like cutting weapon. So a katana is a good cutting weapon. So it can really cut through leather pretty good. That's why there's a little iron studs in it, and that's why it's also a bit bulkier as well to stop a blade from cutting completely through the armor, right? So that's why it's a bit bulkier for it, because they need to make it a bit bulkier to stop, you know, a katana just completely slicing through it. The swords that Europeans would use would be more like a long sword. So it'd be it wouldn't have a curve to it. It would just be kind of a long, flat blade, double edge. So it has an edge on each side. A katana only has one edge. So it only has one side that's sharp. Long sword has two sides that are sharp. And a long sword is also a bit duller compared to the samurai sword. So a knight's sword wouldn't be able to, like, you know, cut through this leather, but it wouldn't be able to cut through the iron either. However, a long sword would be better against iron armor because a long sword, since it's duller, it can bash the armor a bit better. And this armor, this iron armor, is not good against anything that bashes it. So a sledgehammer would be real good against this armor. So a sledgehammer, real good because iron doesn't bend, so it can break this type of armor. While the leather armor is going to bend, it's going to flex when it gets hit by like a sledgehammer. Yeah, sure, it's still going to hurt a lot if you get hit by a sledgehammer, but it's not going to break the armor. This iron armor will break if hit by a sledgehammer, okay, because it's not meant to bend. All right, we're gonna make a bullet. We're gonna write down the word Europe. So we're gonna make a bullet. We're gonna write down the word Europe. So make a bullet. Write down the word Europe, and we're gonna say what this armor is made out of. So Europe. We're gonna write down iron. So we got the Europe, and we're gonna have one iron. So this armor is made out of iron. Second thing we're gonna write down is bad. Whoops, you can't see that. Bad against blunt weapons, and that's like a sledgehammer. I'm trying to move this so you can see it. Okay, that's the best I can do there. So 2, bad against blunt weapons. So this armor is bad against a blunt weapon. So a sledgehammer is what we call like a blunt weapon. It's not sharp. It's not a slashing weapon. It's bad against blunt weapons. So it's made of iron, bad against blunt weapons, but it is good against slashing weapons. So like a katana, which is a slashing weapon meant to cut across somebody. This armor is real good against that. Okay, and then we're gonna write down Japan. I write down 1, studded leather. Let me try to get this in position where you can see it. Okay, there you go. So we got bullet Japan, then we're gonna make a 1, studded leather. So this armor right here is studded leather. So it's leather with iron studs in it. So that's why it's studded leather armor. And this armor is... So this armor is good against blunt weapons. It can also slow down arrows and so forth, although arrows can still, you know, get lodged in it because obviously it's made of leather, so arrows get lodged in it. So it is bad against slashing. Bad against slashing. Let me try to move this so you guys can see it again. There we go. So 2, bad against slashing. So samurai's armor, not very good against slashing, but like a blunt weapon, sledgehammer wouldn't be very good against it. That's why in Europe you see weapons like you see like a ball on a chain, for example, or you see what's called a mace, a ball like on a stick. Like you see these blunt objects. That's because that's good against iron armor, but against leather armor, that's completely pointless. That's why in Japan you don't see those blunt weapons in Japan, because they're just pointless to use in Japan. Okay, so that's why you don't see them for. That's why they focus only on slashing weapons, because they're good against, you know, this type of armor. So why didn't the Japanese have iron armor then, like what the Europeans had? It has to do with the fact that Japan didn't have much resources. So the resources they had they didn't have enough iron resources around to make all their armor on iron. They could put some iron studs in it, but they couldn't make their entire armor on iron because they just didn't have the iron available to do so. So that's why, just a lack of resources to be able to make their stuff like how the Europeans were making stuff. If they had the iron available, they probably would have worn all iron armor. You can see examples of later samurai armor that are made out of like steel plate, and it's pretty much all steel plate. You know, it's like, well, it's steel plate, like, you know, like on top of leather. But you know, it's pretty much a full suit of armor, kind of like this, except with the leather underneath and then steel plates on top. All right, we're gonna stop there.